So some guests you get on a podcast need very little introduction. This one is not one of them. Today I have Dan Proud joining me, former colleague of mine. Bit of an interesting story as well, so I thought we'd get him on, have a bit of a lockdown chat and a couple of beers as well. So Dan, firstly, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, I guess.
No problem at all. So where are you right now? You're back home, I guess.
Yes, back in Bristol at the moment. Have left the flat in Toronto because of, the madness.
Fair enough. One thing I want to know, just before we get into everything, this isn't the reason why I got you on, but I want you to humor me. So I reckon you're the person who may actually humor me in this conversation.
Oh, God.
During the lockdown now, when you're going to do your food shop, have you been going to the same supermarket or different ones?
I'll be honest, and
You haven't been doing it at all.
No. To be fair, before the lockdown, the supermarket I was going to was like 3,000 miles away from where I am now.
Yeah, fair enough. The reason why I bring it up is because I went out earlier on today to Morrison's. I usually alternate between Tesco and Morrison's depending on which one's got the smallest queue. And I've noticed there's a complete difference when it comes to their trolleys. The Morrison's trolleys can handle a heavier load, but the Tesco's trolleys a bit quicker, better handling around the corner.
Okay. Get a good drift on the
I was kind of
Morrisons.
hoping that you would have done some shopping, but it turns out you haven't. So I just sound mental now. So yeah.
What's new?
I suppose we'll just get into why I actually got you on here, and that's to talk a little bit about hockey. So what is your background in hockey then? How far back do you go, and what was your first real involvement?
So my first introduction to hockey would have been Stanley Cup playoffs, 2011, round 2, game 1, Vancouver versus Nashville. Watching it on, I think it was on ESPN here at that time. But yeah, a friend of mine that I worked with, she was always banging on about how great this sport, ice hockey, was, and I didn't really think it was that great. The goalies are so big, the nets are so small that, there's going to be like half a goal average per game. But little did I know that it's far, far from that. So yeah, I went down to her house, sat down with her brother, and her parents, and watched a hockey game, and was kind of like, yeah, this hockey is all right, isn't it? And they're all Vancouver Canucks fans, so they kind of welcomed me in as a Canuck as well, and watched every game, not live, but I watched every game then for the rest of that playoff run when they went all the way through to Game 7 of the final against Boston. And I watched that live.
What happened next?
They lost. So if they hadn't have gone that far, if they lost to Nashville in that first round, I probably wouldn't be into hockey. I probably would have gone, that was a cool week and a half of my life. On to the next thing. But no, watching it for, I guess it works out as a couple of months, I guess, watching the hockey. Kind of got me hooked. Then the following season, kept up with the NHL. Yeah, and that's kind of how I got into it. I started playing then as well, roller hockey, with the people in this family that introduced it to me. Yeah.
And from there, how do you get into the UK hockey scene? Like, because that's one thing that always interests me. When someone gets into the NHL, for example, they don't always know that the UK has a league. Was that the same for you, or?
Yeah, same for me. So at university I studied TV production, and we had to. What did we one of our projects, we had to make some. I can't remember if it was like a documentary or a promo, or we had to make something. I can't remember what it was. And someone that I was working with, I was working in Next part time whilst at uni, and someone I was working with, her dad had just become one of the owners of the Bracknell Bees, of the, what was it then, the Premier League, the EPL. So I went down. She got me in contact. I went down to Bracknell for a game, chatted to them, and they were like, "Yeah, we could, find something to make, some video promo stuff." So I did that, and obviously in interviews with him, other players and other people around the club, they kept talking about the Elite League. I knew that it was a bigger league. I kind of assumed that it would have been about the same as the EPL, just a league better, no different to, I don't know, the Championship from League One in the football. So eventually I got around to typing Elite League into Google, and oh yeah, so Cardiff have got a team. It's kind of the only team anywhere near me. I guess Coventry isn't that far either, but I was like, okay, I'll go down to Cardiff for a game. Oh, tickets aren't that pricey. Um, yeah, and then I went down there. I think it was the first year that the owners, the new owner group, were
So the
there.
14-15 season around then.
That sounds about right. I might have been to an old owners game, like one or two, the season before, at the very end of the season. But I don't know when it was really. It was around 2014, 2015. And then went to a couple more and got into it that way.
So obviously, I know you from your involvement with Ice Time TV. We'll get into a bit about our involvement together later on. But how
Yeah.
did you come on board? What year did you get involved with them?
The first year, when they were the title sponsor um, for the Devils, and I was at a game. It wasn't my first game, but it was, one of my first-ish games. And I was like, oh, Ice Time TV. I'll have a Google of that. And got to their website, read their about page kind of thing. And then I was like, oh, send them an email, might come to nothing. But, and then they were like, yeah, come on down next time you're down. Come and introduce yourself. And that's how I got in the door, really.
So your role kind of varied a little bit. I remember you doing a lot of different jobs for Ice Time. Do you want to talk about some of the stuff that you did for Ice Time TV whilst you were with them?
I guess when I started out, I was very much a runner, helping with, getting memory cards in the right place, getting interviews in the right place. Post-game interviews, I quite often filming those. There's a photo of you with,
Matt
is Zach
Nicholson.
Fitch?
Matt
Yes,
Nicholson,
Nicholson.
Belfast. Yeah.
Yeah.
No beard on me, a lot of beard on him though.
Yes. Which I remember being on the camera for that interview. And then after, I think it was a season or two, I got a bit more involved in the production, like the live production itself, especially as we moved into the new arena. There was more space to facilitate more involvement, not just the tiny little corner that we had in the tent. And yeah, I did a um, bit of camera work. Did a bit of directing, I guess. It's kind of not thrown upon me, but the boss Ado, he was like, right, it's my wedding anniversary on this date, and I'm not gonna be here. I'm gone, and I want you to run the stream this night. So in the weeks coming up to it, you're gonna learn how to do it. And then I did that, and thankfully it all went well that night. And then I was, producing the game most games. Um, yeah.
So I remember when I first came into Devils, you were basically the producer for every game before you end up moving away. But the first time we really started working together was a year before I got involved in the Devils. It was a fun year for us, I think. Not so much on the ice.
Yeah.
Covering the Cardiff Fire for the 2017-18 season, the
Oh,
winless 2017-18 season. Not for a lack of trying, though, in some of those games.
they
Gotta
got a
admit.
point though, didn't they? Didn't they get
They had
an
back-to-back
overtime point?
points. Yeah, they had
Yeah.
a double header at home. I think it was Invicta on the Saturday and then Swindon of all teams on the Sunday. Went to overtime in both.
How do you remember
Because
that?
I just remember being blown away.
Yeah.
I think because I remember seeing someone make a comment on Jordan Lorday's Facebook or something, saying that like
Yeah.
if they made a drinking game of how many times I said his name during the stream, they'd be hammered by the end of the first period. But I don't know if that was a dig at me just constantly repeating his name or the fact that he
No,
was making so many saves.
he was. If they didn't have him in there, I think. Well, is there a mercy rule in the EPL? Like, they must have been close to it.
They must have been at some games. But
Yeah.
it was a fun year. It was a good group of guys for the Fire as well. So
Yeah, and they always put the effort in.
yeah,
Like, if it was a case that they were turning up heads down and defeated before the puck even dropped, I think we would have felt that off of the ice as well, and we would have been defeated doing the broadcast. Because I'll be honest, the numbers for the viewers weren't very high at all for that. Um, but it was great for us. You were commentating regularly on your own, which is very difficult if
yeah, because we
you ask
started the
me.
year. I think Alan Armour joined me at one point. I was away for once. I think Terry Phillips and Alan Armour. I think Joe Myers as well did one of the games.
You yeah, I can't remember.
But I think
Gaz did one. I know that.
yeah, because I think I was.
You pulled out last minute, I think.
Oh, I just come back from Canada and I was incredibly jet lagged. I just
Yeah,
couldn't get
that might have
out.
been it.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
get out of bed. I remember that. But yeah, it was a tough year because you're trying to we're a Cardiff-based stream, so you're trying to big up the Fire, but when it's like 12-0, you're kind of clutching at straws, trying to go,
Yeah.
well, it was a good effort. But
Yeah.
I think overall, I think they enjoyed the coverage. They liked having that exposure as well. And to be honest, with what the Fire are up to now, like they're providing a real good platform for some
Yeah.
development in Cardiff. But yeah, so that's how we got involved. And then second year where I was on the commentary team is when I got called up to do the Devils for color commentary. You were still there. I missed your last game.
Yes.
I was
Did you?
away. Yeah, I was away. I was in Florida doing adult things, going to Disney and getting engaged. Yeah, I remember being so gutted that I missed your last game. But
uh,
the reason why it was your last game is because you moved to where you usually are at the moment, Canada. How did
yes.
that come about?
Me and the girlfriend um were sat on, I think it was in her house in Windsor. Her house, she was renting a room in a house share in Windsor when she was working down there. And um we kind of said, why not? There's a 2-year work visa that Canada offers. And we were like, yeah, let's do it. And we did it, and we went.
So, have you been in Toronto the entire time?
I have. So her visa came through way before mine did. So she went to Vancouver originally, spent 6 months there, and then came back. And then a couple months later, we both went out to Toronto. where we've been since.
And you were in Toronto. I remember seeing this on, I think it was your Instagram or something. You were in Toronto when the Toronto Raptors won the NBA championship. I remember seeing you put something on like the streets. Do you think that city is ready for the Maple Leafs to win? Or do you think if the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, that city will just implode? Because it looked mental when the Raptors won.
So, well, yeah, the with the Raptors winning. So we were watching it in a little pub about 10-minute walk from where we live. And when they won it, I turned around to Abby and said, I'm going downtown. I'm going down to the center. I want to witness this. This is a moment in history that I might not ever get to see again. So I went down with my camera. I was on the subway, and I was heading for Young and Dundas Square because I assumed that's where everyone would be going. So before I got to Young Station, someone let off a flare, so everyone had to evacuate the subway station. So I was walking down, and all the crossroads were full of people doing like dancing, waving flags. The cars were just parked essentially, but they're all hanging out the windows and going crazy. Get to Dundas Square, and there's a bus that's been
Oh yeah, I remember seeing it on like Twitter or something.
yeah
Everyone's on top of it.
everyone's on top of it. Windows were smashed. It was just abandoned. The bus driver had long gone. He was at home having a beer, watching it on TV at that point. um it was just wild. It was crazy. And then when the parade came around, I just don't think that they had anticipated how many people were going to be there. There was millions of people. So the route that it took, they didn't have barriers along the street. So obviously, because there's so many people wanting to see this parade, they're encroaching on the road, so the buses couldn't drive through it. So they had to go even slower whilst they shuffled people out of the road. I think it's a good thing because, the Leafs are in a position now that they shouldn't be too far away from their chance at the cup. If they win it in the next couple of years, I think the authorities would use that as a trial run. They'll say, right,
Yeah, it was a dress
these
rehearsal.
these are the mistakes we made. This is what we've got to do better. Because it's not going to be 2 million there for the parade. It's going to be 5 million, if not more. Like,
It's gonna be the entire city.
it's going to be the entire province, and maybe apart from the ones up towards Ottawa. But
Yeah, they'll probably give it a miss.
yeah,
So being out in Canada then, back to a bit of the hockey talk. So you've gone from working with us on Iceland TV, helping us with our broadcast, and you've done a little bit of work for the Ontario Hockey League. How did that happen? How did you get that gig?
the same way I got ice time. I emailed them. um, Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The first, so within like a week of, no, it must have been, it might have even been before I left the UK. I emailed Peterborough, simply because of Liam Cook. I was like, well, I know him. Well, I don't know him. I know of him. And therefore, like, that team is one that I'm already familiar with. Emailed their media person, and they were like, "Oh no, we don't do the broadcast, but here's someone else's email." Emailed them, and they were like, "Yes, when you're in the country, let us know, and we'll get you on a camera." So I went up and did a game with them. I think it was like before Christmas, and we flew out like the 12th of December. So it was like it was in the first 10 days. I was doing a game up there, and Liam Kirk, I think it's called a hat trick. It might have even been 4 goals. Like, he had an absolute stormer of a game. And like the commentary were like, "Oh, Liam Kirk showing off for his British friend who's on the camera tonight." Um, but that was the only time I got up to Peterborough. All my other games have been down in Hamilton. For the Bulldogs, for the TV broadcast. I almost had a job in Oshawa for the Generals for their in-house production, but that fell through, unfortunately.
I'm gonna say Oshawa. I've seen a bunch of that stuff on social media. I can't remember the name of the girl. Is it Jenny something?
Jessica Corbett.
Jessica Corbett. Yeah, I've seen some
Yeah,
of the stuff that she's put out on social media for what they were going to do with their promo for the playoffs. That
it
looks
looks
like a
insane, doesn't it? All the fire, and I
that
was like, why release it? Like, I get it because half the players won't be there next year, but surely you could save some of that footage for next season.
true, but I think at the same time, when you put that much effort into a playoff
Yeah,
promo, you kind of want to show it off a little bit. So,
yeah,
it does look really good. And that's one thing that I've noticed a lot about OHL teams is obviously it's not a league that's poor. It's a junior league, but it's got money. And
yeah.
the production value for some of the teams looks to be pretty high standard.
As in what you see on OHL Live.
Yeah, on OHL Live, on social media as well. It just seems
Yeah,
to be it's a junior league that's run like a professional league.
yeah, definitely. So, with I can't really talk about what's done on the social media side. I've never been involved with any of that. But in terms of broadcasts, it is a professional production. The games, so I think it's, I think Sportsnet, which is like one of the two major sports networks, they do one CHL game a week. I think that's how it works, and that's a full-on professional. They don't have as many cameras as you'd get in an NHL game, but they've got multiple cameras in there. The pro camera guys doing it, and it's no different to what the broadcast the following night for the Maple Leafs is. But for the OHL, there is lots of community TV stations. So in Peterborough, it's Your TV, which is owned by Cogeco, one of the cable companies. Hamilton, it was Cable 14, which was owned by a load of cable companies. And then Rogers, I think, is the other main one. And they essentially they bring kit to the arena, like a full-on mobile outside broadcast truck with it's not top-level gear, but it's pro gear. It's better than what we have at Ice Time. And that's not a dig at Ice Time or anything. It's just that's how that network works, kind of thing. So you have multiple cameras, and they're all controlled from the truck, other than the operators, obviously. And it's the perfect playground for someone who wants to be to work in sports, because you have the access to the equipment that they use in the industry, in the same way they use it in the industry. Whereas here, it's a bit more bodged together. That sounds like I'm shitting on it. That's not what I'm trying to say. Because it's the Elite League works in a way that it works for the Elite League.
Right, I keep knocking my light off. I've done that twice now.
Yeah.
I was trying to hopefully do that before anyone noticed. So thanks for pointing that out.
Sorry, I should.
No, I think I know what you mean. It's more of the Elite League. is probably more of a stripped down version.
Yeah. With in the Elite League, I've worked obviously with Ice Time, and I've done the odd job with Clean Cut up in Coventry, and yeah, they're very basic streams where you turn up with a camera, you plug it into a computer, you cut a couple of cameras together and put a scoreboard on. They're always every week they're trying to improve on that product. Whereas in the OHL, they have the producer or the director and an engineer, and then they just have volunteers come in. And so in Hamilton, they have so it's Cable 14, and they have a partnership with Mohawk College. It's a college in the Hamilton region, and yeah, they to pass their course, they have to go and do this work experience where they shoot half of the home OHL games a year.
Okay.
So I'm sure on that first game of the season, it might be absolutely rubbish. And like, I don't know, I haven't watched it, and that's harsh. I'm sure it wouldn't be rubbish, but the quality wouldn't be as good as what it is by the end of the season, where everyone has got it down to a T. They know what they're doing, and now they're ready to step into the next league when they get called by Sportsnet or TSN to go and do a Marlies game in the AHL or an NHL game. It's quite a big step, but it could happen.
I'm gonna say that sounds like a really good concept. Just to have part of your course is to produce live events. I know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to do my master's degree. I don't know if
Yes.
I don't know if I bragged about that to you or not.
You have. You've not too much. I haven't spoken to you in order for you to fully brag.
Yeah,
But
but
you've
it sounds like part of my course is going to be similar to that, but producing Cardiff Met sports. So I think to me that just sounds like a really good idea, because I think there's a lot of scope for broadcasts, especially online broadcasts in all sports, not just hockey, to innovate and continue to grow. Do you think that the Elite League, the streams across the board, I personally think they are of a good standard for what we can do? What do you think they need to do to be better and continuously improve?
I think that on a whole, it is continuously improving, but that's very much independent improvement. So in Cardiff, you have Ice Time, you have Clean Cut that do it in Coventry, and then Sheffield Steelers TV, and well, all of them. I'm just going to name the league.
Apart from Guildford and Glasgow and Nottingham.
Yeah. So I think for it to improve, they need to set a standard as a whole. Like the league needs to say, right, we need from every team, including Guildford, not Braehead, Glasgow, and Nottingham, that we need a production with I don't know, one or two cameras with a clock, scoreboard, and a penalty clock. That's the smallest, like that's very low barrier, but that doesn't mean that that's easy. If you have a team that doesn't do that already, they have to either invest in the equipment and learn how to do it, or they have to outsource and get another company to come in, and that's not cheap either. And I know a lot of fans will think that it is easy because you can FaceTime and you can Periscope and everything now, that it's to put a scoreboard on and do this and do that and do replays. Oh, it'd be really easy. It's not as straightforward as typing in your password and calling your nan.
Which everyone should do at this time, by the way. If you
Yes,
still got your grandma's,
I
give
need
them a
to do
call.
that actually.
But no, I think because for me, I just do the commentary. So all I do is just, to be fair, I do the color commentary as well. So all I do is just fill in the gaps that Gaz leaves me. So I'm probably got the most relaxed role. To be fair, I've got to try and sound as though I know what I'm on about. But every
You
now and
get
then,
to enjoy the game.
yeah, and I'll look
I
over to my left. I'll see when you were there. I'll see you. I'll see Dan, Rachel, Charlie, Jack, Ado, just doing all this stuff. I'm like, I don't even know what is going on. Like the amount of times like they'll be like talking like before the game. It's like, oh well, this is what we've built for this game. This is a new thing we're gonna like an on-screen graphic. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm listening, so I haven't got a clue what you're on about. I think
I mean,
it either says a lot about how dumb I am or how difficult it actually is, or both.
if you don't understand what's going on in those like pre-game meetings, you should probably say so that someone can explain that to you.
To be fair, I
So
understand it enough to know how much it's going to impact me.
okay, that's all right then.
But I think, like, I got to take my hat off to you and the rest of the guys from my side. It At times it can look like chaos, but controlled
It is.
chaos.
Not always. But there was. I always remember the end of the Challenge Cup final, which we broadcast. It might have been the last one we did actually. No,
No, I
there
don't
was
think you were
another
there
one.
for the last one.
Yeah. Okay, the one before when Belfast beat Cardiff.
Yeah.
In Ice Arena, Wales. Oh yeah, I got that right, even though it's not that. Yeah. The At the end of the game, so that production, it wasn't huge. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like a Sky Sports coverage or anything, but it was the biggest that we had ever done on the stream. And like me directing it, I was so totally engrossed in the production. I didn't watch the game. Obviously, I watched the game, but I didn't. That wasn't what I was focusing on. I didn't know who had the puck, who was scoring, or whatever. I was just going through the motions and getting this production out. And at the end of the game, Gaz, who was commentating on it, was gutted because obviously he'd kept his face on camera and on the mic, and then as soon as we finished and like went to dead air, he was just so gutted that his team, his passion, they'd just lost the final in their home rink. And I was bouncing off the walls, and I'm like, I was so happy that the production went like a-okay. We didn't have any major hiccups, and it was just it. I never knew that being on one broadcast you could change so much in emotion.
I think as well, you mentioned that Gaz was disappointed and upset about that. I think that's the one thing that I really like about working with him is that, obviously he's very, very passionate about the Devils, but, he'll give props to the other team. I'm sure I wasn't at that Challenge Cup. I was watching it at home and I remember thinking, you couldn't tell. It's like, what was it? It was 6-3 or something. I know Matt Toe scored 2. And they just kind of ran away with it in the third. And I just remember listening to the commentary going, they're still keeping this as neutral as they possibly can.
And that's what Ice Time have always, from day one, have always tried to be, is that neutral. You'll always have someone say, oh, you're being biased, you're saying more good things about the other team. But
that's what I get most. I get a lot of people, well, not a lot of people. I've heard people say that I'm biased against the Devils.
Yeah. But
I think you run that risk when you try and be neutral as a stream. You always run that risk that people are going to go, oh well, you're trying too hard to not be biased. That you're actually being biased against the away team or towards away team.
Yeah, which I get. You might subconsciously be biased against the Devils because you're wanting to make sure that you try and level your comments, but it could also be that you're a Devils fan at the end of the day. You're
Yeah.
passionate about it, and you want them to be as good as you know that they can be. So if they are not getting every pass tape to tape, you're going to mention it.
I think one of the best games that I've done. You weren't here. You're already away in Canada. It was
Sorry.
the last Challenge Cup final we did.
Yeah,
Belfast against Guildford. No skin in that game at all. So that was just a really, really fun game to call because you didn't really care. You could
yeah,
be as neutral as possible. I remember being on the ice afterwards and I'm just chatting to some of the Belfast players and their staff, and I'm just like happy for them.
yeah,
I still remember the first player we interviewed on the ice was Tyler Beskorowany, their goalie. And bearing in mind, I think they'd lifted the trophy less than 5 minutes before I spoke to him. And he come over and he stunk of champagne. And I was just like so happy for him.
yeah.
I think it's games like that that are just really, really fun to call. But I think overall, just the streaming in general it is a really fun job to have.
Yeah, and I think the fun part of streaming is that it is online. It is um just a hockey stream. It's not as though you're going out live on Sky Sports or Free Sports or Premier Sports. Um there's no if you mess up, whether that be me cutting to the wrong camera or you getting a player's name wrong, saying Brayhead rather than Glasgow.
Or just
It,
mispronouncing players' names, which is
well,
what I'm
yeah.
most guilty for.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not okay. You might upset a player. Um, I might upset a fan if I cut to the wrong camera so they don't see a goal. But at the end of the day, it's 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 freedom. You have a bit of freedom to have fun and but still make TV essentially.
One thing that you mentioned it earlier on, OHL Live. So I've looked at that before. I've considered getting it, but I've never thought I don't really have that much investment in the league. I think a lot of people have, since you said like Liam Kirk, he's obviously raised the profile of that league over here. Then there's other people as well. Caitlin Berry on Twitter putting out loads of great OHL content. It is,
Loads.
yeah, unbelievable amount. It's growing over here. The OHL live aspect of it. So I looked it up earlier on today. So to get the regular season pass, which is basically access to every single game, it's like 180 Canadian dollars, and that's access to
Yeah.
every game. Do you think a system like that, obviously budget is a big issue, but do you think something like that would be worthwhile at least talking about for the Elite League? Or do you think, obviously we don't really know the budget of the league itself. I personally don't think it would work as such, but I think it's an interesting concept for the league to discuss.
I I think it is an interesting concept. I do think that it would improve fan enjoyment and fan engagement, which is ultimately what they want. However, because every team sits on the board and they all have an equal vote, and at the end of the day, money that they make through a stream goes straight into their pocket. I think that they're not gonna want to put it in a central pot and divvy it out like that.
Do you think if the league, because the league is growing a lot now, guys like Luke Fish who's come in, it's growing a lot on social media. Do you think 10 years down the line, if everything went perfect, the league started generating loads of revenue, it's something to look at in the future? I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. But as well, in terms of the consistency, that would be a great thing to get the consistent level across all streams as
Yeah,
well.
I think if you do bring out a product like OHL Live, EIHL Live, I guess, you have to set a minimum standard. You have to um, make sure that each product hits that minimum requirement of the scoreboard, the clock, replays, or whatever they decide the minimum standard is. You have to make sure every team hits that constantly. And if they don't, penalize them with the money that comes out of that central pot. Because if you go and watch a stream of one game and it's pretty much TV quality, and then you go and watch another team, notice I'm not naming names, and it's
Tactical.
it's just a single camera, no replays. It's You're not getting the same, bang for your buck. You might all be paying, I don't know, £20 a month to watch however many games you want. But if you support a team that does a great stream, that costs a lot of money to have, if you think a cameraman costs X amount, if you have three of them, that's 3 times a lot. If you have one cameraman, that's obviously a lot less. Plus just the equipment to make the thing be on everyone's screen at home. I think we're way off of it. I think it would be great if it happened. I hope it does happen. But
I think if it's going to happen, it's at least 10 years away. I think a lot of it as well is the teams rely so much on gate receipts. They need bums on seats. So it needs to be in a position where every game is more or less selling out before you even consider it. We'll move on just to a couple of smaller bits then about you. Any particular highlights from your experiences broadcasting hockey, whether or not that's Devils, OHL? I know you've been up to Scotland to do one of the under 20s as well. Any particular highlights from your career so far?
I mean, I'm sure there are. I think kind of every step is a highlight. So when I first did a game with Ice Time.
The correct answer, by the way, was working with me.
Oh, of course, yes. Working with the great Ollie Hampson. The So yeah, like when I first started with Ice Time, that was a huge deal. Every week I was like, "Wow, I'm gonna go work on this ice hockey. Ah, yeah, it's great." And then it was like, "Oh, I'm going to be directing it," and then, "Oh, I'm going to be doing this," and um, doing a CHL game in Cardiff. That was a big thing. Yeah, doing the juniors up in Dumfries. That was a long week, 3 games a day. But yeah, a great experience. Well-earned paycheck. um, yeah, and it's just kind of every step. I was fortunate enough this year to work on I'm not going to get this right, the NWLPHA. Is that right?
I know what you mean.
The National
The letters the
Women.
right way, but I know what you're on about.
So yeah, not the hockey league in North America, but this new hockey association that are doing that Dream Gap tour. I was lucky enough to work on. They did a 2-day event
Wasn't it
in
like an
Toronto.
all-star game or something?
No, it wasn't an all-star game. I think some of their players were at the NHL all-star game. But no, it was just because they're doing this tour and they go all over. Definitely Canada, possibly America as well. I'm not sure. Where they have, just various teams. It was blue versus white. And they had, I think it was about 4-5 games over the weekend. So like that was great because that was on CBC as well. So a big national TV in Canada. Like I think every next step is a highlight, if that makes sense.
You mentioned as well when you were covering games for the Devils, you don't always get to watch the games themselves or watch the players. But doing some of the OHL games, has there been like any young players, like rising stars, that really stand out to you? Obviously, working in Hamilton, I think it was Arthur Kaliev down there, Peterborough now with Akil Thomas, Liam Kirk, Nick Robertson. Is there any like young players that you have really caught your eye, or are you too engrossed in your job?
There is. I should have looked at the Hamilton roster before this. There's um so there's an Edmonton Oiler nurse, Darnell Nurse, isn't it?
Yeah,
So Nurse, his cousin, plays in Hamilton. I've always liked him. Um, I
I'm gonna
don't
look up
know
the
if
name.
I don't know if he has any. You know,
I'm looking up the name now.
I think it's Nick Nurse. It's definitely Nurse, and he
It
plays in
rings a bell.
Hamilton.
Uh,
But he's good.
Isaac Nurse.
Isaac Nurse, close. Um, um, and then there's a young European kid who's there this season. I can't remember what his name is.
Let me have a look. European Jan Mysak? Or Jan
Sorry,
Yannick? Jan Mysak or Jan Yannick?
Yannick.
Yannick,
Yeah,
yeah.
him.
Mysak's, he came over, I think, after the World Juniors or something. He's a real up and coming, but Yannick is a good player as well.
Yeah. And then last season, one of the names you said earlier, a
Kaliev?
second ago, Kaliev.
Yeah.
Like quite big guy, yeah?
Yeah.
I say guy, kid. Um, yeah, he was great. Wasn't afraid to throw his body around, and could shoot. But yeah, it sounds silly when you're filming a game, but you don't. I could be other camera ops might watch a game and be like, "Oh, that was great," but especially if you're on a tight camera where you're only getting the player and the puck in the frame, you can't watch the game. You are literally just following. You've got to concentrate so hard to keep everything in that shot that um, it is. Yeah, at the end of the game, people are like, "Oh, that was great, wasn't it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. Did you see that thing he did?" And no idea.
So I know what you mean, sort of, because before I did the commentary of the Cardiff Fire, I used to go down and take photos. And after the game, it's like, oh, yeah, this was the score. I was like, what was that? I don't know. I more or less had my camera pointed at the net. So I always wanted to get that one shot where the puck was bulging in there. I think I got one in like an entire season of work, and it wasn't even that good. But
there was one day with Ado from Ice Time and Sam Motton. We were in the rink, and Ado wanted the slow mo of the puck bulging the net, and that took too many attempts than what it should have.
who was shooting?
Ado.
Ado was shooting the puck.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh yeah, that would make sense.
That
Ado was shooting
why.
the puck. No, Sam was shooting the puck. I thought you meant shooting the camera.
No, I was gonna say Ado. I didn't even know Ado played hockey or anything.
I don't think he does. I don't. He might do a bit now with his son playing, so only like in the back garden kind of thing. But I don't think he. I think we've spoken about getting him on skates before, and he's been very,
What type of player do you reckon he'd be?
Bench warmer.
I thought you were going to go with enforcer.
I imagine he could be. Yeah, I think he'd stand up for his teammates. I also think that he'd be quite Brad Marchand about it. Like, not as exaggerated as Marchand, but like, I think he'd wind people up for the fun of it.
I think my issue is I'm probably more like, you seen season 1 of Letterkenny?
No.
You need to watch Letterkenny. But there's 2 hockey players in there. They mostly, in like the later series, they get good, but in the first series, all they do is just shout from the bench, and they're not even good. I think that's basically me. So, anyway, that will probably about do it. I'll let you get back to lockdown life. I have a few.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully, You're back out to Canada soon, but who knows what's going on. The
Who
plan to
knows?
stay out there a bit longer?
Yeah,
Stay out there for life.
maybe if they'll let me.
Well, hopefully one day you can join us back on the gantry for Ice Time TV.
Yeah.
I know you've got a Ice Time TV product to be finishing off, don't you?
Yes. Just waiting on some. Just waiting to see if we get the rights to some clips.
We'll talk about that off camera.
Yeah. Yeah. But
No.
I should see you for the NHS game.
Yeah.
That
June or July?
They're hoping, but obviously it's all up
Yeah.
in the air. They don't have a date. They're hoping for it to be soon-ish.
Well, I'll elbow bump you because we probably still won't be able to shake hands.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I remember Challenge Cup final this year. So obviously everything's starting to kick off with coronavirus, and I'm on the ice. Sheffield have just won, and I'm interviewing players, and I just keep reaching for a handshake. It's like, oh no. And so
Did they shake your hand?
One of them did. I'm not going to say who because they'll probably shout, like Steelers fans will shout at me. But there was one. I was thinking, I put my hand out. They hadn't noticed. It was like, oh, sweet, I can put my hand away. They haven't noticed that.
It's so weird though. Like, it's so unhuman to not shake hands and to not get closer than 2 meters. 2 meters is a long way. Although, have you seen the signs that they've used in Toronto where they're saying you should stand 2 meters apart, about the length of a hockey stick?
Yeah, I've seen that.
I've kind of been like stood next to people and been like, could I swing my stick and hit you right now?
That's probably the type of hockey player you would be then.
No, I don't think so. Like,
you're not gonna be slashing people.
I'm kind of a stay-at-home defenseman.
As in, you should have stayed at home, or
yeah, like, short shifts. I don't care if people take long shifts. If I'm not on the ice, I don't, concede a goal. So
I've played defense before. I've been in games where like there was a guy. It's like, oh, change. Like, no. It's like, I haven't been on the ice for a goal against, and they are looking promising. You stay out there, and they like. I'm playing beer league, and I still care about my plus minus. So
yeah, you're the only guy that records it, though, right?
Yeah, more or less. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. I'll definitely try and catch up with you before you head back to Canada, if we're allowed, if we're ungrounded by then. Yeah, hopefully everyone's enjoyed hearing a bit of your story about going from. It's not just Liam Kirk who went from the Elite League to the OHL. It's Dan Proud as well.
Yeah, same year.
Same year.
Was it same year?
Yeah, same year.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining me, though, mate.
Thank you very much.